leading research that connects academia and industry. Dr. Elizabeth Farries is shaping digital policy at UCD. Mark Kelly is at the forefront of AI adoption in Ireland. So please give them all a very warm welcome this morning. I'd like to explore with you all some of the topics that are critical to the success of our digital future that I just introduced, and delved into how Ireland can navigate some of the challenges and the opportunities that are on the horizon, so that we can create a more connected future that's more inclusive in this digital landscape that is emerging, and we can ensure we remain, and you're going to talk to me about that, at the cutting edge of innovation and digitalisation. So I'm going to start with you, Siobhan, on this, because we are in this era, as I say, of true transformation right now. And let's talk about those opportunities and how you see us here in Ireland harnessing and building upon the work we've already done.
So it's a really, really exciting time for us at the moment. So obviously we're going through this massive technological revolution, but if we bring it back to the digital landscape in Ireland, there's a lot of change that's going to really shape the landscape for the next 5 years or so within the country. So if I speak from the perspective of Research Ireland, the organisation where I work, so this was a new funding agency that was established last year through the amalgamation of Science Foundation Ireland and the Irish Research Council. And what that has done is it's created a new competitive funding agency that has a legal mandate to fund across all disciplines. So if we think about development of new digital technologies, we can't be developing them in isolation. We need to consider the world in which they're going to be deployed. So this requires research not just in the area of STEM, but also in humanities and the social sciences, which is really important. So now Research Ireland will have an opportunity to do this at a scale that wasn't previously possible, which will be a key part of our new corporate plan that's in development. Obviously, IDA Ireland just launched their new corporate plan recently, and Enterprise Ireland is going to be launched, I think, this week. So all of that will bring a renewed focus on digital transformation and how we want to shape Ireland into the future. But it's building on a really, really strong base from a research and innovation and kind of industrial-based perspective that has come about as a result of kind of sustained investment by government over a number of decades. And I think where there's lots of opportunities that are arising from that, and from Research Ireland, we currently have over 400 million that is invested in digital transformation projects. These range from small-scale projects involving a single investigator up to large-scale public-private partnerships, including research centres such as ADAPT, Insight, Future Neuro, Lero, and partnerships such as Precision Oncology Ireland. And all of these have a very strong digital transformation focus. But if I zone in on one area where I see huge opportunity now rising from particularly the sustained investment in ICT and life sciences, I think it's at the intersection of those two domains where we're starting to see really interesting research come through that is being worked in partnership with companies. And just to give you a couple of examples, so Cisco, kind of networking security company, are working very closely with our medical devices research centre, Curum, that's headquartered in the west of Ireland. And what they're doing is they're developing virtual hospitals, which is really interesting technology and a way of trying to, obviously, accessing the health system here can be, there can be delays. We all know the challenges that exist. But this aims to try to streamline that whole process, develop greater efficiencies, but also, I think, give patients greater empowerment over their own healthcare journey. So you'll know now if you go for a scan, you now own your scans. They're all digitally available to you. The reports are available. So it's helping individuals really take care of their own health. And this project grew out of actually a really other interesting project, which was the Home Health Project, a pilot done on Clare Island. So I don't know if any of you here have been to Clare Island. It's an incredibly remote place. The ferry journey over can be very choppy, and apparently during the winter months that ferry is cancelled half of the time. So there's a very elderly population that's based on that island. So what they did was developed remote technologies to enable those that have chronic conditions so they can measure their physiological measures, they can then be transmitted back to the healthcare providers to help guide their journey. They even have a robotic dog that will triage emergency situations. So it's really fascinating technology that's been developed there. There is a lot more that I can talk about, but I might
And we'll get to that, but it's interesting when you're seeing the real life effects and the practical improvements it's making to people's lives as well. Liz, I want to bring you in here because you're director of the UCD Centre for Digital Policy. And in this area, how do you connect with industry to create innovation?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Claire, and to everyone, it's good to be here. Just to build on what Siobhan has said, there's a real emphasis from the reports that the EU needs to strive to match our neighbours in innovative potential, but also to exceed in providing opportunities in education and lifelong learning to tackle some of these technological issues that are being raised. And Ireland's doing that. The UCD Centre for Digital Policy, we've been delivering on those goals in education and in lifelong learning since 2020. We have a master's in science and a grad dip, which focuses on the skills, providing a deep knowledge and theoretical and applied understanding of the technological issues that are raised today. But we also offer a professional certificate and micro-credentials, targeting professionals and graduates who want to get a broader perspective of the changes that are happening on the ground right now. We are in our 5th year. We have had 400 professionals and students, either across government, from industry, from civil society and academia, join from their professions in our classroom or go on to enter those professions. And it's really down to the startup funds provided by Microsoft, who in 2020 recognized the need for digital capacity, the need for these skills and these lifelong learnings. And so we've been working on that for the last half decade.
All right, very busy with that, and important as well that you're working with industry and developing these things in line with the policy and the drive and the funding that you have to do that and work and collaborate in that way. Mark, emerging technologies, they do provide real opportunities, as we know. And as someone who's supporting and advising on artificial intelligence, how are these new technologies being embraced by Irish business and more generally globally? We know it's the catchword of the moment, but right now, are we really seeing very fast development and an embracing of all of these developments by companies here?
Yeah, so in 2018, I co-founded a company called Aldis. So we're an AI staffing firm. We've got an office in Dublin, Glasgow, New York, and Austin, Texas. And we help companies build and scale AI-first businesses. And I do executive search in that. And last week marked my 750 on-the-record interview with these AI leaders, just asking them, how are you putting AI in action? And what's the impact of doing it? When ChatGPT came to town in November 2022, nobody really thought it was going to be as big as but it's just been exploded since then. And some companies have been kind of slow, and then some companies have been incredibly fast. And although technology is very, very important, the main point is the leadership. It's the leadership to actually say, we're going on this journey. And I can tell you about all the different types of models and the applications, but fundamentally it comes down to having a growth mindset. And the companies, and I'll talk a little bit about this later, the companies that are really striving forward and really looking at how they can disrupt have got this mindset, and they hire for mindset, and they create an environment for mindset. Okay, interesting. But with that mindset, you also need people with the skills. And that's something we're going to touch on for a moment. So, like if someone wants to future-proof their career in a digital age, let's talk about the first skill they should focus on. You could say, look, there are many, but you have to prioritize here. What does upskilling look like in this area, Liz?
Oh my goodness. I mean, it'd be good to hear from the audience on the primary skill that we're needing in this technological age. I think the skill would, at this stage, reflect a blend of tech know-how, analytical skills, strategic skills, communication skills, critical skills. It's this unique blend that allows us to understand the tech ecosystem that we're in now. And I can break that down a little bit. Like, you don't need to be a lawyer to understand the tech ecosystem, but you do need to sort of understand a bit about the regulation. You don't need to be a coder or a computer scientist, but you do need to understand how that tech works. You don't need to be a social scientist, but there's a need for a critical understanding of what new technology does and how it brings both benefits and sometimes negative impacts to our society. And if you like, I could itemize that further.
Yeah, do. Go into it a little bit about, I suppose, the tools that are required in this area, Liz.
So the UCD Centre for Digital Policy, we deliver these educational programs, and we have a number of different experts that come in and support it. So to start, Professor Colin Scott, who is a PI on the program, comes in and talks to the students every year and offers a map or a sort of toolkit of the digital society, sort of outlining the actors, the people, the bodies, the frameworks, the norms, the values and rights that inform our technological age. You can't talk about the tech without understanding it, so some introduction to machine learning, to computer vision is very helpful, and the evaluation tools for understanding how that tech works, AI auditing, data protection principles. We're grateful to welcome the Irish Data Protection Authority into our classrooms every year to talk about the importance of control of one's own data, ethics, rights, privacy, transparency, and we tend to hear from civil societies on that, particularly the Irish Council for Civil Liberties. Security principles, you can't have innovation without cybersecurity, and we like to hear from the National Cybersecurity Centre on that. Familiarity with the tech standards is absolutely important, and we hear from the NSAI on that, tech standards as well as infrastructures. Data literacy is important, and it's certainly, part of that is all of us being able to interpret the data that is presented to us, but we also need to understand how that data is produced and circulated, so certainly some statistical and quantitative analysis skills are important. And then I'd also like to point out the specific topic of platform governance, which Professor Eugenia Ciapera delivers for our programs. The lessons and the principles we've learned from the governance models attached to platforms is now being shifted into the governance of AI as we move between the DSA and the AI Act here in Europe.
Okay, so there's plenty, and we'll get on to the issue of safeguards and governance and all the ethics that surround this new technology that really have to go hand in hand with welcoming and embracing it. But Mark, to come to you, and you mentioned an AI mindset. Like, what does that look like? How does that work well in business? And how do you have the AI mindset while keeping up with the day job?
So when you're reviewing the interviews that I've completed, the one thing that stands out from those 750 interviews and the 650 applications we've reviewed for AI Ireland for the AI Awards is AI is not just the icing on the cake for these companies. AI is the flour that makes the cake.
Okay.
Everything that they have within their mind is how do we weave in? And this is the 4 Ps. So it's the people, the process, the product, and the place. So the people, they're empowered with the technology to do amazing work. So Copilot, for example, is a standard. But then you bring the proprietary data, the insights of their business, and suddenly you're empowering them to make incredible next best decisions or actions. And then when you look at the process, so if we look at a company like Walmart, Walmart was dealing with loads of different suppliers, long-winded suppliers that had a very, very transactional relationship with. So they went out to 100 suppliers and they said, hey, we've got this AI tool, would you like to use it? And they expected maybe 20% to say yes. And 89% came back and said, yes, we want to try it out. So the expectations was between 15 to 20% that it will close out and actually have a better process. 89% of those closed out on those contracts. And they went back and said, hey, we gave you this AI tool. We didn't quite know how it was going to go. Do you hate us? Do you love us? What's it like? And he said it was grand. And they were like, why are you so amenable to us? It's like, well, I work in janitorial services. I don't have 6 weeks to chase someone in Walmart to get my PO. I need to do this, and I need to get out my day job. This sorted it out within 2 to 3 hours. So if you're embedding the process with digitalization across your standing operating procedures, it's less time and effort. In South Dublin, think about thousands of contracts are coming through for this large multinational. Now they can review those contracts and insert immutable text in 24 minutes that took 3 weeks. So you're implementing standard operating procedures with digitalization. So that's people, process, and then the product. Weaving AI into the product. Now, staying away from that wouldn't it be cool snare projects and introducing it there, but introducing it where it needs to be. And then the most important, the place. Creating a culture where you can have a safe sandbox to trial out these different products and services. How does that work in reality, though? Well, maybe you're a sales team, or maybe you're a marketing team, and you come together on a Tuesday for a lunch and learn from 1 to 2 p.m., and your teammates share over 5 minutes the pros and cons of an AI product that they've used. And within that 60 minutes, you've empowered the team. You do that twice a month, suddenly you create this AI mindset. You do that across all departments, and you've created a weight that's getting stronger to develop a muscle, and suddenly you're on a growth trajectory. It's not uncommon, some of the companies I'm working with, from 30% to be more productive in 1 year to 300%. How do you compete against that type of company? You don't, and that's where we need to get to.
Okay, interesting to get that kind of collaboration over lunch with people, looking at what's worked for them and what could work in this business. But Siobhan, let's talk about the skills, and we touched on it there, across academia, in areas of research and in enterprise. How is that being used from an AI? How is that sort of coming into this whole area of research from your point of view?
Yeah, so I guess one of the key outputs from what Research Ireland funds is research talent. And we're always acutely conscious of that talent serves a wide array of purposes in a knowledge economy like Ireland. And a number of years ago, seeing this massive digital transformation coming on stream, the availability of the talent to be able to move into the companies and have that wider skill set, that it's not just the discipline-specific skills that are needed, but it's this wider training in, Liz talked about strategic communications around ethics, etc. These are all really important. And it's all about producing, so the level we produce at it's PhD level and above. And it's how do we make them industry ready so that they are ready to move into industry and are filling the gaps that are in the system. So we were fortunate through government to secure €100 million to set up centres for research training, which were basically these vehicles to produce a large number of PhD graduates in the area of data science. But they're trained in partnership with enterprises such as, I know Microsoft has engaged very heavily in this program, has been a great advocate for it. But the companies are basically saying these are the kind of skill sets that we need wrapped around the data science, the core data science expertise. And it's been incredibly successful now. It's still, the PhDs are still going through their 4-year degrees. The last intake was just recruited last year, but there's an ambition for 760 to come out of this now, which is only a drop in the ocean, but it's a real commitment from government. But this wider skills development focus and the kind of deep involvement of enterprise in that training is a model now that we're trying to roll out over other programs that we're doing. There's a new program, Innovate for Ireland, where more companies want to get involved in kind of helping shape the skills of the researchers that are coming out of the system in Ireland.
Okay, it's really interesting how you're bringing that talent through and that people are being trained up in this area, which I think is going to be so much part of our future. But to come back to the governance issue, and Liz, you touched on it there, how important is it that we don't just consider this technological focus, but also look at teaching ethics within that?
Right. It's 100% relevant. I mean, ethics predates technology, but technology makes ethics more important than ever. And the ethical questions attached to AI regarding transparency, regarding accountability, regarding oversight, regarding a whole suite of human rights, including privacy and data protection, are fundamental. So we certainly deliver that material in the course, and we talk about AI and its intersection with ethics.
Yeah, and within that, you've just been awarded research on a European level that will explore the benefits and the risks of AI from a societal perspective, haven't you?
Yeah, well, I mean, when you opened it up, you said it very clearly, like the future is now. The future impacts of AI are here. But AI continues to unfold and the impacts continue to unfold. And the situation is uncertain. There are a lot of expectations that we're hearing about, the important developments that AI brings. The space is not homogeneous, it's contested. There are positive and negative outcomes possible. And what we need from a research perspective is empirical data to track the impacts and then to understand the effects and to understand that from the perspectives of everyone in society. And so we started this three-year, $3 million research project with thanks to support from the European Commission, an EU Horizon project, tracking successful AI applications for European economy and society. And that's with myself and Professor Eugenia Ciapera at the UCD Center for Digital Policy. And we're going to take this data and we're going to derive an updating set of criteria for AI success. And we're going to base that on expectations together with position perspectives in a holistic way in order to identify, but also to expand the conditions of possibility for widely accepted, human-friendly AI applications. And we're really excited about it because together at UCD, we're working with 8 EU institutions across law, across computer science, social science. We're working with the SMEs and the think tanks that are connected with labor, civil societies that are bringing in gendered perspectives. And we're going to spend the next 3 years collating this data to design governance mechanisms that are going to feed into the current regulatory landscape. So watch this space because we're going to bring a lot of information out of this project over the next 3 years, and we're very excited about it.
Yeah, it's really exciting and interesting, and you've a lot to work with there and a lot of work to do, you know, in exploring all those benefits that come with it. Siobhan, you know, what's being developed from a regulatory point of view from your perspective?
Yeah, so from the activities that we fund, it's really trying to understand how to navigate through the European legislations, that regulations such as the AI Act, and then how that distills down to what companies in Ireland would need to do, but also recognising that data is a core part, is an integral part of all this digital technology. And how do we, as a country where we know over a third of the EU data resides in Ireland, how do we protect that data and develop the right governance frameworks to really help companies navigate through it? So they want to collect the data, they're, you know, data-driven organisations, but how do they use that data in a way that creates competitive advantage, but at the same time is protecting the rights of the data sharers, which is a very tricky area, and we can all see when, you know, the dangers of when that goes wrong. So what we have done is supported a consortium within Ireland, and this is something, I guess, it's a really uniquely Ireland opportunity because we're small and connected. It's really easy to bring together different parts of the system. So we brought together all of our digital research centres, we brought together companies, other funding agencies, so we worked very closely with IDA Ireland on this, and other parts of government like the government CIO, to really kind of come together and look at how do we create an appropriate data governance framework for Ireland so that we have an opportunity to lead internationally in this area. This is the Empower initiative that has kick-started a number of years ago. It's been incredibly successful so far. They've developed a data governance roadmap for Ireland, which sets out our ambition for being leaders, but developing the digital technologies in a way that is equitable for all of society, and are working with companies in terms of helping them navigate through all of this different legislation. And the ADAPT Centre in particular has developed these digital tools where it's mapping the EU Act, different data standards, and helping companies really kind of understand as they develop new AI technologies, how do we make sure we are conforming to all of the rules that are out there?
Yeah, because what strikes me is that, you know, trust is at the heart of everything here, and is at the heart of any new innovation to succeed. So how important is it, Mark, to set those ethical boundaries and have that focus from the very start?
Just to give a little bit of context, There's probably around maybe 150,000 companies at the moment offering AI products or services. And in my role doing executive search, I've kissed a lot of toads of these products, right? You're inevitably asked, would you mind trying this out? And there's certainly a lot of good ones. But just because you can doesn't mean that you should. Mm-hmm. So fundamentally, we need to understand it. And for AI to really scale and to weave in, it has to be trust. We have to believe it, right? We have to go. And I think from an Irish perspective, it's a wonderful opportunity to be a leader in that area and doing it the right way. Because there's products and services out there at the moment that allow you to apply for 10,000 jobs while you sleep. That creates a cover letter, personalized, and a CV that you can send across. Now, currently, the companies that review those CVs and cover letters have to do that manually. They can't use AI to screen. So if you're in Dublin City Council or you're in any company and you've got these flocks of CVs coming through, how do you deal with that? That's a new problem. Or if you're an investigator or a funder, you're going for new types of funding research, you can use an AI product or service within 15 minutes of chopping and changing that will create a very, very compelling argument why you should get funding. What happens now? How do we start to compete? How do we collaborate? And I think that's where the AI literally comes in to go, this is where we're currently at. Here's some of the challenges. We don't even know the unintended consequences that's coming down, and that's the importance of actually understanding it. So it's about having that honest conversation about where we need to go to.
And more broadly, when we look to a digital future, there's skills, ethics, technology there, and there's a lot for businesses to consider and to implement right now, Siobhan. Let's talk about the key driving forces behind this transformation. What's the critically important thing for companies right now, in your view? We can talk all about AI and the new innovation that's there. What's top of the agenda?
Yeah, well, I think Mark referenced it in some of his comments earlier. It's around competitive advantage, that if you don't adopt the technologies, it's kind of, I guess, part of a broader mandate that companies need to continually innovate. And if you don't innovate, you're going to lose your competitive edge. And we've seen lots of examples internationally of cases like Kodak with the digital technology that didn't fail to adopt, and kind of the company then failed to exist into the future. So there's lots of different ways that companies need to embrace this technology. I know Mark referenced kind of data-driven decision-making, which is something we're seeing certainly a lot of that from a research and innovation perspective. And this can be kind of anything from, we've had agri-services companies work with our researchers, actually with researchers based out in UCD, where they've developed technology to help guide kind of production of their seeds in terms of the plants that they're growing, that they use for their agri-services. Mm-hmm. How do we produce those in a way that minimizes the negative inputs such as fertilizers, but then maximizes the yield that we get? And so we're getting really interesting research in that area of companies like Origin Enterprises. Equally in the pharmaceutical sector, which I think I understand is a sector that probably is a little bit earlier on the Industry 4.0 journey, is the ability to be able to trial out. So they're developing new compounds that might be the focus of a new drug. They now can work with centres like SSPC to develop a digital model of that production process. So instead of having to spend a lot of time, staff time in the lab and a lot of reagents, they can now do a lot of that work up front digitally. And I think certainly in the drug discovery area, it's massively accelerating the whole process. So it really comes back to that. If you don't embrace this transformation, you're at risk of losing your competitive edge.
All right. Liz, would you agree with that? And from working with business, what do you see as their priority right now, and what's driving businesses that, the UCD Centre is working with?
Thanks, Claire. I mean, the centre, as a policy centre, as a digital policy centre, we interact with all the stakeholders in the tech policy ecosystem. So certainly government, certainly academia, civil society, and industry as well. And I could mention the priorities of specific businesses that we've engaged with. Our 4C research project, one of our partners is Digital SME. It's a group of SMEs in tech across Europe, and they're really focused on promoting experience exchanges, know-hows, best practices for tech to sort of acknowledge some of the hurdles and some of the advantages that both Siobhan and Mark have outlined here. That's Europe. Here in Ireland, I could mention IBEC, that's Ireland's largest lobby and business rep group. They are increasingly dealing with tech and look to see how Irish business can gain power through tech to improve lives, to solve problems, to strengthen Irish society. And then certainly, from our perspective, last but certainly not least, is our engagement with Microsoft, who is bringing in that capacity support for the lifelong learning pieces, for the education pieces. And I might just give a shout out to Professor Conlon, who lectures on the program every year on some of the some of the parliamentary democracy issues that are raised by new technologies. And we also engage with Dr. Kevin Marshall, who runs DreamSpace as well. So those are some of the business priorities that I see from my perspective as a researcher.
Thanks for that, Liz. And I suppose to come to you, Mark, on this about what are the critical actions or what is at the forefront of remaining, in a digital leadership role. Where do you see the priorities?
So one of the biggest challenges you have when you're in a business is you want to scale and grow, but you're building this plane while you're flying the plane, right? And you're really time poor. But having the opportunity to say, well, actually, how much is this going to cost me? What does this actually look like? So trying to figure that out. So I'm working with a company in South Dublin, 50,000 employees, and they're looking to roll out AI agents across the world. And they're trying to figure out what that's going to be in 3, 6, 9, 12 months. What if it's a massive success? Well, that sounds exciting, but what does that actually cost us? So it's trying to help people on that journey to start to show them, but also having these use cases where you can say, this is this company, this is the industry, this is what they've done, and this is how they've done it. Here's the journey that you can go on, and bringing that to life. So really focusing on that, I think, is very, very important. And then also making it accessible to everyone. So my brother's an electrician, my mum is a tour guide. My brother, he does speech to invoice. So he'll take in some calls, and rather than he go home at 6 to 7 to send out the invoices, after the call, he just says, yep, send that invoice, and it goes across. It might save him 20 minutes, 30 minutes a day, but he gets home maybe at 5:30 rather than 7 to do his work. My mum's tour guide helps to draft the first itinerary, and then she polishes it off herself. She doesn't need amazing products, but that helps her to create a service that she then impacts. And I want that for the whole of society. And we're trying to help 1 million people become AI literate. So you don't have to have a degree, a PhD. You just need to stay in your lane, use products and services that can help you move forward. And that's the great thing about AI. It's personalization, and it helps you to do that journey. But our biggest challenge, how do we get it out to people? And also, how do we make them feel like they need to go on the journey rather than it's actually happened to them?
Yeah, and just, to look at that, about the significant challenges that we face right now in adopting new digital technologies, Siobhan, how can we overcome these obstacles, do you believe?
So I think it's really about a lot of what we've talked about today, and that there's a lot of, sensitivity around the use of our data, about not understanding the technologies, lack of transparency, and certainly from kind of a Research Ireland perspective, we would be very heavily focused on trying to develop the research that we fund, making sure it's developed in a way that's trustworthy AI. So some of the centres would certainly have a mantra that we develop this technology for the world we want to live in, which I think is a great way of looking at it. So then how do we build up that knowledge that's needed to be able to develop technologies in that way? And a big part of what we do as well is we also engage with the public and kind of educational programs. And I think that's really important, back to kind of the data literacy, but also trying to build that culture of speaking about AI so that we understand what AI is and what it isn't, and that it's responsibly deployed. And I think that's, for Ireland, is a real opportunity in that development of responsible AI.
And also fostering that culture of innovation and experimentation as well. Liz, would you think that that's very important? Embrace it and go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would just echo and repeat what Siobhan said and add. So we need ongoing support for education as the ecosystem changes, and equally, we need ongoing support. For empirical research in tech, we need to understand the tech that we are designing, deploying, and regulating, and we need the skills, and we need the lifelong education. Our digital policy program today will look very different 5 years from now compared to when we started 5 years ago, because that's how quickly things are changing in society, and we need to keep pace, and research and education allows that.
And the ethics and the need to remain transparent while doing all of that is critically important as well.
Absolutely. The ethical piece, the regulatory piece, the human rights piece, that's all part of the educational and research puzzle.
And you believe, finally, Mark, that that's something that companies and businesses are critically aware of as this future is being embraced?
Yeah, so the way I'd say it is this: we've all got access to Einstein in our pocket now to do whatever we want to do, act as if. And we can start to empower ourselves and our people to do incredible things on this island. It's there laid out for us. And we're creative poets, creative, so we can do this. It's just having the confidence and the mindset to go, we are going to be the leaders. Because when you spend time with the leaders, it turns out they need a lot of support too, because they don't know necessarily where it's going to go. Well, why don't we go on that journey where we actually say, we're going to be a leader too? And that's the growth leadership mindset I want to see.
That's going to stick in my mind, being on the plane while it's being built, but we'll move on from that. An exciting future nonetheless. I'd like to thank you all for being here this morning and sharing your thoughts on our digital future. To Mark, to Liz, and to Siobhan, thank you very much. Thank you to my panellists.